My name is Lauren Clapham. I'm a trainee legal executive in the lifetime planning team. Probate is the legal term for being able to deal with someone's estate on their death. It depends whether the person that's died has a will or not. It's often easier to administer an estate where there is a will, because it appoints people known as executors to be able to deal with someone's estate on death. It also gives clear intention as to who's likely to benefit under the will. These individuals are known as beneficiaries. Where there isn't a will, the estate will pass under the rules of intestacy, and this can be more difficult and complex to administer because there is not a clear intention as to who is appointed to deal with the estate and who is intended to benefit. The very first steps of probate are to register the death and arrange the funeral. Once this has taken place, the executors are able to begin to start the estate administration. This involves writing to the asset holders and writing to any creditors to establish the assets and liabilities. The assets and liabilities must reflect the value as at the date of death. The executors are also under a duty to identify any gifts that the deceased made within the last 7 years. Any gifts that are made must be added to the value of the estate. There will be other factors for the executors to consider surrounding business property, agricultural property, overseas assets, digital assets, and potential family circumstances for those of individuals that could bring a claim against the estate. Depending on these factors will depend on whether there is inheritance tax payable. The general rule surrounding inheritance tax is that tax will be payable on the chargeable estate. This is the amount of the estate that passes over a tax-free allowance. The general rate of inheritance tax is 40%. If the beneficiary left some of their estate to charity, the estate may be able to claim a reduced rate of inheritance tax, which is at 36%. The general tax-free allowance sits at £325,000. This is known as the nil rate band. Generally, anything over this amount will be taxed at 40%. That means for every £10,000 of the estate that's over that amount, £4,000 of tax will be payable. There are allowances and reliefs that can be claimed in order to try and mitigate inheritance tax. The most significant of these are applied to those individuals that are married and in a civil partnership. Anything that passes to an individual as part of a married couple or civil partnership is exempt from tax. The benefit surrounding this is that on the second death of the either married couple or civil partner, the executors will be able to claim the unused transferable nil rate band to double up the tax-free allowance to £650,000. Furthermore, there is also another exemption that can be claimed, known as the residence nil rate band. This is a tax-free allowance that is based on the property belonging to the deceased. Where the property is left to direct descendants, this includes children, grandchildren, stepchildren and foster children, an extra tax-free allowance of £175,000 can be claimed and applied to the estate. Similarly, with the nil rate band, the residence nil rate band can be added to the second to die's estate, meaning that the maximum tax-free allowance for a married couple or civil partnership could be up to £1 million with no tax payable. Once the assets and the liabilities have been established, the executors will be under a duty to apply for a grant of probate. The application for the grant of probate will depend on the value of the assets and liabilities. For an accepted estate, meaning that there's no tax payable, the executors will be able to apply to the probate registry directly to obtain the grant of probate. Where there is tax to pay, an inheritance tax return will need to be submitted to HMRC first, and they will need to give a valid receipt before an application can be made to the probate registry. It's very difficult to give accurate timescales as to how quickly a grant of probate can be administered. This is because largely, once the application has been submitted, the length of time the application takes is very much out of our hands. Generally speaking, obtaining a grant of probate can take anywhere between 6 to 12 months after death. Once the grant of probate has been administered, this is a significant point as part of the estate administration. However, there is considerable work left to do. The grant of probate is a court order that gives the executors permission to be able to deal with these deceased's assets. This includes closing the deceased bank accounts, selling or transferring any property, or even encashing investments on behalf of the deceased. If any assets sell for a gain, particularly property, the gain may need to be reported to HMRC and capital gains tax may be payable. The important factor here is that the gain must be reported to HMRC within 60 days of the sale completing. In some circumstances, it may be relevant for the executors to register the estate with HMRC on the trust register. Furthermore, the executors may need to declare any income that's been received during the estate administration period, as there may be income tax to pay. Finally, if the estate was subject to inheritance tax, clearance may need to be obtained from HMRC in order for the estate to then be concluded. Once all of these points have been taken care of, the executors can distribute the estate in accordance with the will to the beneficiaries. There are additional things to consider. Within 2 years of death, the beneficiaries may wish to execute a deed of variation to divert their inheritance or to safeguard family assets. The important thing to note here is that if any beneficiaries are in receipt of means-tested benefits, they cannot enter into a deed of variation to divert their inheritance. Furthermore, the beneficiaries must notify the Department for Work and Pensions of the inheritance received to avoid any potential overpayments. Finally, to make things easy for your own family, the beneficiaries should consider updating their will. They should also keep an up-to-date list of their assets and any lifetime gifts that are made to help their executors in dealing with their estate on their death. That's a very difficult question. In some respects, how long is a piece of string? However, generally speaking, for an estate that does not pay in any inheritance tax and doesn't have property to sell, the estate administration can take between 1 to 2 years. For an estate that is taxable and has property to sell, the estate administration may take between 2 to 3 years. However, there are more variations with these timescales that are outside of our control, such as updating the property title at Land Registry and any communication with HMRC. I really hope you found this short video helpful. If you have any queries, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. The contact details for me and the Lifetime Planning team are on the Ashtons Legal website.